Welcome back, everybody, to episode 4 of Magic of Science. Today, we're going to be covering sacred geometry. Now, this is one of my favorite topics because I feel that it's a perfect marriage of science and magic in the sense that it has a lot of metaphysical and a lot of physical properties. So today, we're going to cover a couple topics around this idea. We're going to talk about the flower of life, the Platonic Solids, Fibonacci's spiral, and possibly we'll get into numerology and chemistry if we have time for it. All right, so starting with the flower of life. If you are unfamiliar with this symbol, I suggest giving it a quick Google. It's a series of 19 circles that are all identical in size that they fold out of the center circle in a ring series of 6. Makes a hexagon that gets bigger and bigger. Now, normally there is a cap to this. They put a circle around it after 19 circles. And this is because this shape has a really ancient religious as well as a very powerful geometry application. So the religious and spiritual side of the flower of life is that if you look at Sufism, which is what the Egyptians used to believe, or you look at ancient, even like Chinese, or they found this symbol in Jordan temples. Like, this symbol is all over the place, and it represents to a lot of cultures the story of creation. In the way that the Bible has the 7 days of Genesis, the flower of life has the first circle and then the first 6 circles, which complete the first important image in the flower of life. Known as the seed of life. And so this symbol, it mirrors pretty much perfectly the story of Genesis in the sense that each new circle added creates a new system of information. Now, what's interesting, though, is that these systems of information and the religious context kind of line up with our modern understanding of physics and geometry. Now, for example, in the first 2 days, if you will, the first day, God said, "Let there be light." Well, from the first set of circles that we get, you get what's known as a vertica Pisces. And a vertica Pisces is if you take 2 perfect circles and you stack them so that their edges touch a center point, basically make the Gucci symbol or the infinity symbol, but like stacked over a little bit. That shape in the middle is known as the vertica Pisces, and from that shape we get all of our geometric understanding of light. That shape is how we create camera lenses, and that's how we reproduce the human eye in all sorts of technology, including recording technology like what I'm using right now. And so you could follow that all the way out through all 7 days, but just for the sake of brevity, I'm going to say look into it for yourself. It's very profound. Some other interesting things that come out of the flower of life. If you connect all of the center points of the circles, but with straight lines, you get what's known as Metatron's cube. Metatron's cube is known both in the world of metaphysics and in geometry again. Because Metatron's cube contains what are known as the Platonic Solids. So the Platonic Solids, these are what I consider the only conceivable, real, tangible idea of perfection. And what I mean by that is that these shapes follow a very strict set of laws that make them extremely exactingly ordinary. One, for example, would be the cube. It's a very familiar one. And for those of you that are online, I'm going to take a second and throw something up on the screen for you. Give me 1 second. Okay. So there are 5 Platonic solids in the world of geometry, and there are 6 in the metaphysical world. The 5 that are the common ground are the tetrahedron, the cube, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the isosahedron. All right, so these shapes, they follow a very particular set of rules. All of the faces are congruent, all of the lengths of all of the edges are the same, all the interior angles are the same, and if you put them inside of a circle, all of the outside points will touch the edge of the circle. And with these set of laws, there's only 6 shapes possible. And what's really interesting and profound about these particular shapes is that these shapes are very common in chemistry. These shapes are known as paths of least resistance. And so these paths of least resistance, they, on a chemical level, they're very inviting for energy. They create a path of least resistance in which all matter builds itself on a cellular level. The easiest way to see this is in crystalline forms, and I think this is why a lot of people are very spiritually drawn to crystals, is because these particular shapes are very profoundly Platonic solid. They follow the laws all the way up to their final form of their chemical nature. It was proven in, I want to say 1979, that each element on the periodic table actually has a Platonic solid structure. Let's see if I can look this up. And here we go. No, that's just more on that. So what's profound about this is that when you're using, when you're trying to create new chemicals, or you're understanding how chemical bonds work, the Platonic solids and chemicals that already follow the same construction geometry are going to bond a lot easier. And so it's almost like a roadmap for chemistry, the Platonic solids. We're finding new ways to use them in modern architecture as well. There are structures that are being built that are called hydrogen or condensation harvesters that basically follow one of these shapes, and they collect moisture out of the air. And as they do that, you can get up to like 28 gallons a day using an icosahedron type shape. So moving into Fibonacci's spiral. So this one, whether you're familiar with it or not, you've seen it somewhere before in life, because what's profound about Fibonacci's spiral is that it is everywhere in nature. And what I mean by that is, like, it is from the smallest to the biggest. It is the shape of a conch shell, it's in a sunflower, it's in a dragonfly's eye. It shows up in human biology a ton. The tip of your finger represents one part, the next knuckle of your finger represents 2 parts, the next knuckle is 4 parts, the next knuckle. And so 5 parts. The way that you get a Fibonacci spiral is by creating squares that represent a number series. And it's a very simple number series. The simple number series is you take the 2 previous numbers and you add them together to get the next. So starting with 1, unfortunately, that's the first part is where it gets weird. So it's 1 plus 1, because the next number is still 1, equals 2. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 2 plus 3 equals 5. 5 plus 3 equals 8. So on for infinity. All right, now if you make squares that represent each one of those numbers and you start stacking them together, and then you draw a line from the outermost corner that touches the edge in a spiraling pattern out forever, you have unlocked what is known by mathematicians as God's thumbprint. And the reason that it's called God's thumbprint is because statistically it shows up so frequently in nature that it is mathematically impossible that it's not part of natural math, which if you take a second to like fully appreciate what that means that like this is a fundamental mathematical truth about the universe itself, and it can be found everywhere. And I think so, like, that's a good segue into numerology. Numerology, now this one is, I feel like, a very easily kind of overlooked as being purely metaphysical, in the sense that each number in numerology, on a spiritual sense, has its own kind of definite meaning. If you're interested in looking up your life path, it's pretty easy. There's basically a key that you use for numerology, where you stack the alphabet in such a way and you assign each one a number. And so, like, determining things like your life path or your life number are relatively easy. Once you get your large number, you're going to separate each integer in that large number. So say that's 1002. So each number separated, it would be 1 plus 0 plus 0 plus 2 equals 3. So my life number in that particular math would be 3. Sometimes you'll have to do that more than once. Like if your number is 98, for example, or let's say 985, all right, then the number that you get when you add all those integers up is going to be greater than 9. And since numerology deals mostly with single digits, and I say mostly because there is this doubling happening, but I'll get back to that. When you're breaking down these numbers, you're always going to reduce it down to the smallest single or multiple of the same digit. So when I say multiple of the same digit, if you see like 22 or 44 or 88, that counts as a single digit. It's just more powerful. It has more meaning behind it. And so if you're breaking down your life number and you get to 22, stop there. Don't go to 4, because those are completely different ideologies. And each number in numerology is supposed to have like a spiritual significance. And there's also this dimensional understanding where the primary numbers, they represent their own dimension of understanding. So like 1 or 5, like those would be completely unique. But then there's integers of 3. So 3 is supposed to be very powerful, as well as 6. And then 9 is supposed to represent the highest plane. So they all have these spiritual connections. But there's also power in practical understanding of numerology. Prioritization. If you understand numerology and you apply things like the 80-20 principle, then you understand that the top 2 things in your life, that they should be the most worked at. All right, so I covered numerology a bit, covered chemistry a bit. Doesn't look like I have anyone jumping in live. So it looks like it's going to be a short one today. Not a problem. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I appreciate your time. I hope that you learned something today. Make sure that if you haven't already, that you hop over to the website and then subscribe to the calendar, so that way you can get in on these conversations. We do normally have people joining live via Clubhouse. So if you're interested in sharing your opinion on some of the topics coming up, please do so. Join us on Clubhouse. I'd love to hear and chat with you. That's the whole reason I'm doing this, is so that we can come together as a community and talk about some of the things that are more important. All right. Well, as always, I hope you guys have a beautiful Friday. Much love, and I will see you.